Hi, Marina. I'm so glad to have this conversation with you. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well, Lisa. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to.
Yes. Oh my gosh. At the time of having this conversation, would you like to share your latest with everybody who's listening?
Yeah, I'm about to be 34 weeks pregnant, and yeah, just experience all the feels, all the things that come with that.
I'm so thrilled
Feeling,
for you.
yeah, I'm very, very happy and slowing down. The body is asking, slow down. So for me, everything is slower now. Even my thinking process seems to be slower.
Oh my gosh, right?
Yeah.
Are you just soaking it up all this time right now, motherhood? And I wish everyone could see right now. You just look so in bliss. And I wish that for everyone who desires to be a mom who is on this path. And I just thank you so much for being here. You're a somatic healer. You do coaching, embodiment work, really diving into the somatics, this deep inner transformational work
Yeah.
that's so deeply
Yeah.
moving.
hmm Yeah, and my work is really in the intersection of sexuality, trauma, and spirituality.
Yeah.
So there is so much depth and potency in those areas of the being that I feel really fulfilled by this. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you and I got to connect a year ago. It was almost a year ago, June of 2023. I was looking back at my notes when I first got an email from you. And
Mhm.
just to take everyone back who, you have your own fertility challenges that you experienced through unexplained infertility and
Yeah.
did experience a couple of IUIs. And at that
hmm
time, you had reached out to me considering IVF.
Yeah.
Um, so thinking back to where you were and how you were able to conceive. I really want to dive into your personal story and the things that supported you and how you were able to tap into some of your own practices that you teach and guide others through of,
hmm
where was that click? Where was the shift as you were going through your path to motherhood and you did
hmm
not have to go through IVF, right?
Yeah.
Um, well, take us back a little bit to your own fertility path where you began.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's important to recognize or acknowledge that I don't know, I think most people never think they will have fertility
Yeah.
issues,
Yeah.
right? So this was not on my radar when my husband and I decided to start trying to have a baby. I actually thought it would be very easy.
Hmm.
And so I took my time deciding if I wanted to be a mom. That was the first piece, right? So when I
Hmm.
turned 40 in 2021, I'm like, okay, now I cannot ignore thinking about it anymore. My husband was ready from day one. He always wanted to be a dad.
Oh,
So it was really about me coming to a place of what I like to say an embodied yes, not just saying yes because I'm married, because he wants.
yeah.
Um, so I did first my own processing around that. Do I want to be a mom? What that does that look like for me? I do think that the fact that I am a fairly new immigrant to this country it scared me a lot because I don't have my, you know, family here. I don't have my support network here. So that was a piece that I had to come to terms with.
Mhm.
What will that look like not having grandma or aunt or, you know? Um,
Yeah.
so when we said, okay, let's do this,
Mhm.
we actually tried conceiving naturally for about a year. And the beginning, we were very, easygoing with it. I knew from my app, I knew my ovulation window and also from my body. So we would make sure that we had sex in those days, but it was in a very, gentle,
Mhm.
flowy way.
Yeah.
At the same time, I was working with an acupuncturist who does specialize in women's health and fertility. So she would always ask, oh, where you are in your cycle, what is going on? And because that's her work and her world, she started asking more questions. She started suggesting a few supplements, this and that. And then there came a time that she was like, Marina, because of your age, I do think you might need to consider seeking a fertility specialist to see why, after 1 year, you haven't really gotten pregnant. And that's what we did. And of course, in that period, that's when we got more intentional about, trying the conception without assistance or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then that was very weird because scheduling sex
Yeah.
like that with that
Yeah.
goal in mind can be, it it's a whole
Not a fun
conversation.
thing.
It's not fun. It's not sexy.
Takes away a
It's
lot of
not.
intimacy. I know. And it's like scheduled and timed. You're like, oh, yeah.
Yes. So there was that. And then because of the work that I do, I'm like, okay, we need to then be creative and find ways to add fun to this. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So
Yeah.
there were both sides, the sides that we were really like, oh, come on, this is not how we want to be having sex. And the side in which we actually explored so many things that were really helpful for us to just find fun.
And you were like 42, right? At this time? 41,
Uh,
42?
at this time, 41.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
41. Yeah, that's 2022.
Got it.
And then I saw fertility specialists. Well, first I saw my OB, and then she ordered a bunch of tests and all of that. And then she sent me to a fertility specialist. And that's when we got diagnosed with what is not a diagnosis, unexplained infertility,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is like, okay, people, we need to do better
Yeah.
than
My
doing
doctor would like
that.
to, he'd like to say unspecified infertility.
Mm,
But yeah.
much better. Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
unexplained.
Yeah, and of course, because of the way that the Western medical system works, her first suggestion was like, you need to do IVF because of your age.
Mm.
You don't want to waste more time and all of that. So I had that visit with the fertility doctor was very shocking for me because
Mm.
first there was the non-diagnosed
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
unexplained infertility, and then she started laying out all the things that could go wrong if I waited more time
Oh gosh.
and sort of building an argument for the IVF.
Mm.
And I was not prepared to receive all of that. Like my nervous system was in shock. I kind of went into a mild of a freeze state because she would say, "Do you have questions?" And I'm like, "No." And just like, not being able to engage in the conversation,
Yeah. Yeah.
which was a signal for me. After we left her office, I'm like, okay, that was a lot for me. I have so much to process here, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not making any decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
my husband was on board. And for him, the whole IVF piece was a no-brainer. He
Mm.
is a physician himself, so the medical system for him is fine, works
Oh,
fine,
he's a doctor.
He is, yes.
Oh, okay.
Um, and then we started having to actually negotiate what I was comfortable with because it was not the same that he was comfortable with.
Mm.
Um, and I wasn't comfortable with IVF. I'm like, why are we not even trying an IUI, which is such a simpler procedure? It's much less invasive. It requires much less of my body, of messing
Mm-hmm.
up with my hormones. So for me, it was not that I was a no to IVF. I was a no to IVF as the starting point.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah.
I wanted to try the IUI first and see how it would go.
And they said that you were a candidate to try that.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's
Yeah.
good. Not everyone,
Uh,
guys, like we were not a candidate for IUI, right? And so it's like, good
exactly.
thing you
And
were getting
then
the basic information from your from your OB, then the fertility specialist to guide you. That's so key. So they were guiding you.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's the thing. If I had been diagnosed with something that said, look, IUI won't work for you. You
Yeah.
need IVF. That's the
Right.
only route.
Yeah.
That's a different conversation and a
Yeah.
different reflection for me. But it's like, oh, we don't know what's wrong. Your tubes are fine. Your ovaries are working well. Actually, your egg count is really good for your age. There's no this, there's no scar in your
Huh.
womb. Like, his sperm is fine. So for
Yeah.
me, it didn't match the information that we were getting with the
Mm-hmm.
advice of doing IVF right away,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know?
So you had 2 rounds, right? 2 rounds of IUIs?
Yes. So I had one in April and another one in May, and none of those worked,
Yeah.
which is devastating, which
Yeah.
is like,
Yeah.
um, again, as I started this conversation, I don't think any person trying to conceive starts by thinking they will have fertility
Right.
issues.
Yeah.
And then when you start fertility treatment, at least
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was like, oh, it will work.
Yeah.
Like the first IUI, I actually left the clinic and I had a whole full body experience. It was actually really precious. And I'm like, I'm pregnant. This is it. It worked. I was sure I was pregnant because of
Mm-hmm.
the experience that I had in my body, in my womb. Um, and I wasn't, right? So that was really difficult for me to take in and to grieve. And then the second round as well. And on top of that, right, Lisa, all the hormones
Yeah.
messing up
Oh,
with
yeah. Yeah.
everything, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I was very emotional. I was very like out of my nature, like really trying to recognize myself.
Mm.
And then when we had the second one that failed, I thought I needed a break.
Yeah,
So
I remember
that
that's what
was
you shared
May
with
last
me. You
year.
shared with me you took a break to reassess, to center yourself, which I think is
Yeah.
so important for anyone listening to listen and know, it's okay. And it's a good thing to take a break for yourself, reground, recenter, right?
Yes. I I actually think that it was that break that prepared me to continue and to
Mm,
actually have a positive outcome.
okay.
Because in that break, I really did the work. Like I reached out to you because, of course, after the second round, the doctor said again, look, I think now we're good. Let's do IVF. And I was still not sure. I was
Yeah.
still like, I don't know. There was
Yeah.
something in me that was saying, it's not about this. I don't think I need the IVF, really,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is a tricky place to navigate, right?
It is.
Because the reality is, I wasn't getting pregnant, but there was an inner voice saying, it's not that,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that's where I opened the space to then explore, to then be with myself, and to do my homework, right? I do my homework when I have to make important decisions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things was to reach out to you. I heard you on a podcast, I think, and then I'm like, oh,
Mm,
great. Let me see what she does.
yeah.
And because again, I do think that if we don't have any reference of other people who are going through the same, if we
Mm,
don't, the way that the medical system works here is very not concerned around like supporting someone through the
yes.
journey. It's really the procedure. They're
You're
very
right.
good at
Mhm.
the procedures,
Yeah,
right? Experts, great, bravo. But what about the humanity of the person who is going through the
exactly.
procedure,
Exactly.
right? And that's where a coach like you felt like, oh, okay, she will be able to hold me through this,
Mm,
knowing the procedures that I'm going to go through. So that was important for me, that it was someone who had that experience
mm,
and then can support me navigate the landscape
yeah.
that is so unfamiliar for me, so
Yeah.
foreign. And foreign in two ways, right? Foreign because I had never considered that I would end up in need of the fertility support, but also foreign because I'm in a foreign country. And there is a way that the medical system works here that's very different from Brazil, especially in terms of relationship with patients, right? I used to go to the clinic, and each time I went, a different person would see me, a
Mm.
different nurse, a different practitioner. I'm
Yeah.
like, guys, you don't build relationships? What's
Yeah.
wrong? Right?
Wow. So you were living in Brazil at the time you reached out. Is that right?
No, I was living here.
Okay. You were living here. Okay.
I moved
You're
to
in the
the
San
US in
Francisco.
2019.
Okay.
So I've been here for 5 years now.
Okay.
But
Gotcha.
it's still a foreign system, the medical system,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially something that I never did before,
Hmm.
right? So,
Thank you for
yeah.
touching upon that. You're right. It is, it is such a medical process, especially, fertility treatments, IVF. And thank you for just sharing some of that insight because yes, you come from a background where somatics and the energetics, this is so key, right? Tuning inward to our body, really listening, soma, body, somatics, right?
Yeah.
And creating what I wish existed and seeing a need for this.
Yes. Yeah. Um, and in a way, I think that there is, I don't want to fall into the trap of, oh, the Western medical system is the bad guy.
Right.
I actually am very, very grateful that there are possibilities for people who struggle with their fertility like us. I actually think I have a friend, Brit, she talks about the people who do the IVF, all the professionals involved in the
Yeah.
fertility process as alchemists, as
Mm,
these wise, alchemists that are making life possible through medical technology.
yeah.
But if we look at them, they are alchemists. They are doing
Mm.
incredible energy work, to be honest, even though they might not use that
No, it's
language.
a really cool way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I'm incredibly grateful for this technology, I mean, without it, we would not
exactly.
have our daughter. And wow, I love your perspective that you share.
Yeah. Um, so that was it. In that break, I did a deep dive on myself. Well, I'm always diving deep on myself, to be honest, but that was a very intentional moment of doing that. So I spoke to you. I have been working with a somatic practitioner for years now, and we
Mm,
really focus on integrating my experiences of the failed IUIs.
mm,
And what was this that this living body in its wholeness was telling me about what would come next? And I also went really deep in my spiritual practice, Lisa. I have always been a deeply spiritual person. I have a very heightened senses of mediumship. I
mm,
have, connection with the spirit world in very easy and accessible ways. I do shamanic journeying for myself as a
mm.
practice. I meditate, all of that. And that was the key for me
Oh,
in terms of like, oh, I know why I want to try IOI again. In that process, I started communicating with the spirit of my baby
mm,
through meditation and shamanic journey. And I started understanding that they were going through their process before incarnating.
yeah.
And I also started understanding that our timing is not necessarily the time, the divine timing of things. So, like, I took my time deciding if I wanted to be a mom, right? I wasn't
Mm,
rushed. I took my time. And it's not like, okay, I say yes, next month I'm pregnant. Oh, I say yes, now let things evolve,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then let's see where we get. And then we get pregnant. So, through all of that, I actually came to the conclusion that I was not ready for IVF yet.
Mm,
And And I spoke to my husband about it, and we had a conversation. I'm like, I'm not convinced that that's what we need. You know,
Yeah.
there's something that is not really landing for me.
Mm.
Um, and I received an orientation that also the key was in maturing my eggs
Okay.
before the procedure,
Mm.
um, which in the first two rounds was done in a way that was not ideal. So in the third round, there was much more attention paid to that. I had to take more injections to stimulate my ovaries. I was going to the clinic every day for a week so they could follow the growth and
Oh.
the
Oh.
maturing of the
Okay.
eggs. And everything was going fine, unlike the previous two times.
Yeah.
Um, and then when it was time to go and collect the sperm and just do
Yep.
the insemination, I had many viable eggs. So
Mm.
much so that the doctor was like, huh, are you prepared for multiple, for
Oh.
twins or something? Um, and I said, I trust life. Let's see what life will present us with. And then that's the rounds that worked.
Wow. Okay. I didn't
Right?
realize that was how you conceived. Your third
Yes,
round of IUI.
it
Okay.
was. It was. So I actually had to reach out to the doctor's team, telling them that I wanted to do another one. They didn't want that. I said, I insist.
Okay. Yeah.
And they said, okay. The doctor said that you can try two more IUIs, and if it doesn't work, she won't do more IUIs. She will
Mm.
only do IVF if you are still up for it. Said, great, we won't need that. And that's when it happened,
Wow.
right? So I think that again, I don't want to be the person who says, "Oh, trust your instincts, it's all good, ignore." What Western medicine is telling you, because I don't
Mm.
believe in that. I think Western medicine is really, really valuable and supportive and needs to be considered in our informed decision-making process, right?
Mhm.
But there
Mhm.
was something very, very strong for me that was like, that's not the route for you,
Yeah.
right? And also in my communications with the spirit of my baby, I understood that she just needed a little bit more time. She was
Yeah.
like, it's hard to incarnate. It's hard to, I had so many dreams with her. There was a full spectrum of things that only happened because I allowed myself to take the break, because I allowed myself to go deeper within my
Mm.
spirituality. And
Mm.
I got so many gifts from that that I also think were preparing me then for the conception to
Mm.
happen, then for the embryo to form and to grow. Yeah.
That's really beautiful. I mean, the waiting, that's one of the hardest parts of this, I'd
Oh,
say, is the patience that it takes for a conceiving mother, right? As you're calling in your baby. That is truly one of the hardest parts of this.
yeah.
And speaking about some of the lessons, would you mind sharing some of those lessons through your spiritual practices, your spirituality? What comes to mind?
Hmm. Well, I think the first one is the trusting the divine timing of
Yeah.
things. You
Yeah.
know, the,
Yes.
the divine timing of things is not our time. And and at the same time working towards your goal, your
Mm.
desired outcome. So for me, it's both ends. I have very much an openness to the spiritual etheric world, and I'm super grounded in this incarnate experience. And in this incarnate experience, if we don't take action and we just wait for things to
Yeah.
manifest as
Right.
miracles, I think it can be problematic. So I like to join both, and that's how I make my decisions. That's how
Mm.
I tend to lead my life. But the divine timing of things is not something that we as humans are capable of changing or bending.
Right. Hmm.
So for me, it was a big process of surrender,
Mm-hmm.
of understanding with humility that I don't have control over things that are bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have control over when my baby will be conceived. I don't have control over how my baby will be conceived, right?
Yeah.
And that's big for someone who has control freak tendencies.
You're not alone. I think a lot of ladies listening to this, it's like type A, control. We want to control it all.
Yeah, right? Oh, like this.
Not
Uh,
doesn't fit in a perfect box like that.
yes. Um,
Mm,
other lessons. So there is a lesson that my mom teaches me over and over again. She keeps coming back to this, that life is a dance between grieving and celebrating, grieving and
mm.
celebrating.
I feel that.
And while I was in the muck of it, in the harder parts of it, she would remind me, grieve, feel. You know, you got your period again when you actually wanted to have a positive pregnancy test result. If you don't grieve that, you will not be able to celebrate when
Mm.
things actually happen the way you want.
I got chills hearing you say that. It's so true.
Yes, yes. And for someone struggling with conception, sometimes it's round after round of grieving, right? My
Yeah.
grieving started when we were trying to conceive naturally, and each time I got my menstrual blood, that's it. My day would, become gray right away, and I
Mm.
needed to grieve, right? So I could move through it and then celebrate. Oh, let's try again.
Oh, that's really
Yeah.
beautiful. Your mother is so wise. That's life, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Continually grieving and celebrating. And so,
Hmm.
as a somatic trauma healer and embodiment coach, when did you start doing that work? And like, it supported you obviously through your fertility path. At
Hmm.
what age kind of did you step into this work?
I started 5 years ago in
Okay. So more recent.
2019.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And then I just from them got deeper and deeper into the trauma piece of it. So I started more with the embodiment, sexuality, eroticism, and the way that I saw that whenever we go deep into especially female sexuality, there's so much trauma there. And
Mm.
I really wanted to be able to support people integrate those traumas in deep ways, in deep, meaningful ways, which is the approach of somatics, right? That works with mind, of course, but with body, with nervous system, with stress responses, stress cycles, survival responses, and all of that.
Mm.
Uh, so that they could experience the eroticism that they all desire to. So for me,
Yeah.
it's both, right? I really
Mm.
love the process of working with someone who's terrified of their own body, of their own sexual energy, because they have been wounded, they have been hurt in the past, and to help them integrate those experiences and create capacity to reconnect with their eroticism again
Mm-hmm.
and develop a new empowered thriving relationship with eroticism.
Mm.
And of course, conception, pregnancy, birth, these are erotic experiences, these are sexual experiences, right?
Yeah.
So for me, there has been throughout the entire process also a reclamation of bringing back the eroticism and the pleasure and the potency of
Mm.
our sexuality that is able to create life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if the starting point of the life was in a lab, in a
Mm.
doctor's office, it's still our sexual energy that is creating that,
Mm.
right? It's still
Yeah.
the egg, it's still the sperm, it's still so. throughout this entire process, I've been very attuned to how is it that because of culture, conditioning, history, people dissociate pregnancy from sexuality, from
Mm.
eroticism, right? And
Mhm.
it has helped me a lot in various ways. First, during the conception journey, I made a priority to give my body a lot of pleasure before the procedures and after the procedures.
Mm.
And like when I say a lot, I say a lot. Sex with
Okay.
stuff, being in orgasmic states for like half an hour to an hour so that
Wow.
my body would be in that energy of orgasm, that energy of pleasure, that energy which is the energy of conception, which
Mm.
is the energy that when egg meets sperm, there is the explosion of life, the creation of life, right? And I made a commitment to myself that even though I would have to go to a clinic, very sterile environment,
Yeah.
not sexy at all,
Yeah, it's
that
not.
I would somehow weave my erotic energy, my sexual energy to all of this. And I do think that has helped me immensely in various ways. First,
Mhm.
because pleasure is a natural regulator of our nervous system. I was
Yeah.
going through a very stressful phase of my life, overwhelming phase of my life emotionally. So bringing lots of pleasure to my body was almost like bathing myself when I was, you know, becoming depleted by all the things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also because I do believe that bringing pleasure to the whole thing makes me more powerful,
Yeah. Yeah.
makes me more aware of myself, of my body, of the potency of this body. And that's the energy I wanted to bring to
Mm.
conception.
You're speaking
Yeah.
my language.
Yeah.
Let's turn on our pleasure on our fertility path.
Yes.
It's not something that's often talked about, especially when you're in fertility treatments.
Yeah, it's
So
not at all.
sharing a little bit without getting like too revealing, but like, okay, so before a procedure,
Mm.
were you doing some breath work? Were you doing some visualization, kind of getting in the zone, like self pleasure?
Yeah.
What kind of things were you doing? If I could
So
ask.
if I were home,
Yeah.
that would be a full-on self-pleasuring
Okay.
practice, breath work with visualization. There is a technique that we call sex magic. So
Yeah.
I would visualize myself conceiving. I
Yeah.
would even visualize like the egg being fertilized and all of that, the whole thing
Yeah.
while in pleasure,
Love it.
right?
Okay.
Yeah. But if I wasn't at home anymore, because of the work I do and because so much of the work that I do has to do with channeling erotic energy, I would just channel those orgasmic states to my
Uh-huh.
body. Nobody needs to know what's happening. And I'm just in that wave of orgasmic energy. And I was in that wave of orgasmic energy when I was being inseminated, right? I was really like, okay, it's
Wow.
here, feel arrows. And I mean, I want to be mindful of this because this is something that I trained to do and that I'm very good at doing. I
Yeah.
don't expect someone who has never worked with
Right.
erotic energy to just
Right.
lay down and
Right.
channel,
Yeah.
orgasmic
You're a
energy.
specialist in this. Let's just put that out
Yes,
there.
I
You teach
am.
others, you lead retreats. Yes,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
really
I
have a
do
lot of
this
practice.
with in rooms with 100 women, supporting them channel
Yeah.
their own erotic energy and
Wow.
let it flow and have full body energetic orgasms. So I was doing that as well, so that I would be in a very open, surrendered, relaxed state. Because the body does contract when we're stressed,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
The body tightens and contracts and closes.
Yep.
So that was also a way for me to open my cervix, to open my womb as the
Mm-hmm.
person was inserting, the catheter with
Yeah.
sperm. and to warm up my womb, because that's also important, right? No
Mm,
wonder I do acupuncture. I really wanted to move energy in my womb. I really wanted my ovaries to be warmed up. And sexual energy is that energy that does that,
yeah.
so that you have an environment that is more appropriate for the conception. Yeah. And then at home, coming back, I would either do a self-pleasuring practice. My husband and I, we had sex all the time when we were doing the inseminations to also increase the chances of
Yeah.
conception. So much so that with like this last one that worked, we don't know if it was really in the clinic or if it
Oh,
was us. We don't
oh,
know, which is a good mystery to have. We can play
yeah.
around with that.
Yeah, I love it so much. Oh my gosh. Yeah, something what you're about is helping individuals. I've heard you talk many times about this, like reawaken that inner power, that inner strength that is inherently within us.
Mhm.
And I think so often through our fertility treatments, we do give away so much of our power. And this is a time to reclaim that. And as you say, build our capacity, expand our capacity to
Mm.
hold more, right? The vitality, life as we're creating life. Like it first kind of starts with us. Wouldn't you agree? It starts within us.
Yes, of course. I think, the attitude that we bring to the journey makes a lot of difference.
Mm,
And it's so easy for us to be more identified with a defeated attitude.
yeah.
Because honestly, the journey is difficult as fuck.
Yeah.
Pardon my French.
Go
Uh,
ahead. Yeah.
it is. So it is very, very easy. I don't know what it felt like for you, Lisa, but for me, there was that questioning, why am I not capable of doing this? Where is my body failing me?
Mm.
You know?
Well, to
And
be honest,
mm,
and you asking me that question, we had some male factor challenges.
mhm,
So
yeah.
I had a lot of eggs. Numbers were
Mm,
pretty high. So it was more of a sperm quality and sperm
yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
Um, but I also had some polyps to be taken out. It
Mhm,
was a combination of why we
yeah.
needed IVF. I didn't really wallow in the why me or the poor me or that kind of
Mhm.
mindset. I mean, it would cross my mind and it was kind of like, why do we have to experience this? And honestly, I wouldn't have changed it. I mean, yes, we had a great outcome with our one embryo, one healthy embryo.
Your story is just so
Oh,
amazing.
thank you. But yes, I do. I can understand and thinking about trauma as that's one of your specialties,
Mhm.
um, helping women with somatic trauma healing. Can we talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, of
I think
course.
going through fertility treatments too, right? It's like, especially with repeated rounds. I don't know
Oof.
that. I went through 2 egg retrievals to get one healthy embryo, but just thinking back, and thinking about those who are listening, and there's this idea of, with trauma that it requires us to look at, to speak like with someone like you that is a specialist. So, one of the things you've said is we can get trapped in it. It can hold us back. So would you dive into that a little bit?
Of course. Well, I do think that we cannot ignore that medical procedures can be deeply traumatic, whatever
Mm,
medical procedure you're having,
mm,
for a number of reasons. Usually, there is a fear for either life or for losing something, even if it's
mm,
not life completely. There is a sense of powerlessness for many people.
mm,
You need to take anesthesia, you need to lay down, you cannot move. There's someone doing something to your body. And I think that many people don't perceive how impactful that can be to
mm,
their own sense of self, to survival responses that they might be stuck on in their bodies.
mm,
One of the procedures that I did for the fertility non-diagnosed, was traumatic for me, actually. It
Oh,
was really, really hard, which was, it's a, I don't remember the name, but they insert this saline solution in the
yeah.
womb to
Yep.
check if the tubes are blocked, right?
Yes. Yes. Hmm.
That was so incredibly painful for me,
Oh,
so uncomfortable, so difficult for me. Um, and I saw myself contracting, contracting,
oh,
contracting, contracting. And if I were not aware of how that was impacting my body, I would probably just say, oh, it is what it is. Every person who does this procedure goes through discomfort, just suck it up.
mm,
But knowing that that can have a long-standing impact on myself, I actually had to work with that with my somatic practitioner right away. I
mm,
had to, complete my stress cycles responses. I had to do the things that my body was not allowed to do while I was in the procedure, right? So that I could find some integration, some resolution for that, and my womb would not be completely shut down because what I
yeah.
wanted was for my womb to be open,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Yeah.
That the emotional trauma that a person, a family, a couple can go through when facing all these difficulties, the financial challenging for some people who cannot really afford these treatments, all of this can compound in a
Mm,
person's nervous
hmm.
system and be read as trauma.
Yeah.
And if they stay there, I do think they make everything even harder
Yeah.
because
It's
your
true.
body's carrying more stress in a moment that you're trying to do something as beautiful, as powerful, as goddessy, divine as conceiving a child,
Yeah.
right? So I do think that, well, I don't know in your clinic, but the place that the people we worked with, they actually suggested seeing a therapist. They have like psychotherapists
Mm,
in their staff,
mm,
um, because they do say it is important that you get psychological help.
mm. Nothing was
Because
suggested yeah, to us. So
no,
no.
okay. Yeah, I was very happy that they did that. I
Mm,
didn't take it because I already work with someone. I
mm,
already
mm, hmm.
have established relationship. But I do think that folks who are navigating this journey, and especially if it's very tumultuous,
Yeah.
like you do multiple rounds, you find complications. I remember when I read your book, Lisa, I
No.
was like, this woman, wow.
No,
What is
thank
that
you.
strength? Because you found complications, you had surgery. I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, that's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And how do you go through all of that without receiving support for the parts of you that are getting hurt by the journey?
Yeah. I mean, in our situation, it's like I was open and sharing the book how a sisterhood, a book club, a Reiki
Mhm,
practitioner, an art therapist. I mean, all these supports are coming to me. And then
yeah.
being an occupational therapist, it's like I could tap into the tools that you had.
Mhm.
But you're right. I mean, there are not enough specialists to support individuals through this.
No. And even to support the couple, keep their intimacy, their
Yeah.
eroticism alive
Yeah.
when they're
Yeah.
navigating that. Because it's very usual for people to stop having sex, for example, in the moments
Hmm.
that they actually should be having a lot of
Right.
sex,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? But how, if you're feeling defeated, if you're feeling like, super stressed out, pleasure, eroticism, they don't like the shutdown of a stressed out body and
Exactly.
nervous system. They
Exactly.
like the openness of a relaxed one. And I do think there are parts of the way that people navigate the conception journey that is not
Hmm.
taking that into consideration. So again, going back to what I said before, for me, conception, pregnancy, birth, they are deeply erotic
Mm,
sexual
mm,
experiences. And we cannot ignore that because when we ignore that, we make it even harder.
yeah.
It's even I'm not having any pleasure. My partner and I are not being intimate at all. And intimate is intimate. It doesn't mean,
Yeah.
anything. It doesn't mean intercourse for straight couples, but intimate, caressing each
Yeah.
other, kissing, hugging, cuddling, right?
Mm,
And I think that's a piece that can be very medicinal for folks when they're in the journey.
mm.
And of course, getting some help if you're feeling that it is way too much. Because the definition of trauma is too much, too fast, too soon. For me, my exam that I described before felt like too much. It felt like way too fast,
Um,
and everything happened too soon. So
um,
my nervous system could not digest that. My
ah,
nervous system could not be at peace with that, right? Um, so get some help. And I have to say this, trauma lives in the body, trauma lives in the soma. So, in order to heal trauma, you can only go so far just talking about it. Talking
mm,
about it is important. Yes, it helps. It does. But it doesn't help you integrate on a deep somatic level. That is what can create shifts in your life. That is what
mhm,
can create a real sense of well-being, vitality, and
mm,
aliveness. So
mm.
you can continue pursuing the things that you want. And in the case of this conversation, you can continue pursuing your desire to conceive a child,
Yeah.
right?
So
Yes.
good. What are your thoughts about trauma and healing as far as, is it a never ending journey to heal? I'm curious. Yeah. Well,
I
I
love
mean,
the question.
you do good. Okay. Cause I'm just like, for those listening, it's like, are you ever fully at a place where you're like, I am 100% healed? Is it an ongoing journey? Trauma, like, is it are always a part of it there? Is it, yeah, I just want to hear in your words.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Um, I don't think it ends, but I
Mm,
also think that there is such a thing as being healed enough.
okay.
I think that the problem is trying to be completely healed. We can't be completely healed for as long as we are human beings living in
Yeah.
this planet. Life itself is traumatic.
Mm,
There is not one single person in this planet Earth that has not experienced some sort of trauma. Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
sorry, something
That's,
happened. You
that's okay.
disappeared. Okay, sorry.
No worries. Thank you for
Um,
going there and answering that. So,
so
mm-hmm.
healed enough, and healed
Mm-hmm.
enough will look differently for different people. If you experience abuse, neglect, you know, famine, if you are a refugee of war in your childhood, you have a bigger load, probably,
Mm, mhm,
to look
mhm.
at. And you might stay in the journey for a little bit longer. But if you had like the small T trauma, not the capital T trauma,
Yeah.
maybe you do some work that is directed to the things you experience that you stay, you work with a practitioner for 6 months, for 1 year, and you're like, not what? I'm good to go now. Right?
Mm,
I don't think we should be healing trauma every day, all the time, for decades and decades. Actually, we also need breaks, even if we come back later,
yeah.
so that we can access the different layers. But there is such a thing as being healed enough, Lisa,
Okay. Thank you for
and
answering.
it's not the same as being 100% healed, because I really don't believe in that.
Mm,
And how boring life it is if we are
right?
100% healed.
So true. So true. Well, I just love
Yeah.
everything that you're about. You do help gently integrate traumas. From your website. I've read, about your different skill sets and really regulating the nervous system. So, so key. I talk about that a lot. Feeling more pleasure in the expression of your sexuality, finding the energy to go after your dreams and passion projects, developing your self-confidence, free of fear, of judgment, of external. It's so good, of expectations. So the work you do is so, so important. I've heard only the best about your retreats, and
Mm.
hopefully one day maybe I might get to experience one of them. Would you share how everyone can find out more about you? I'll include some of your links in the show
Yeah,
notes. But
yeah. For folks who want to learn more about my work with somatic trauma healing, I invite you to come to my website, marinanabao.com. I imagine you're going to write that down for people so I don't
yes,
need to
yes, I
spell.
will.
I'm also on Instagram as Marina Nabao. And these are the best two ways to connect with me. I host retreats myself, and I also host with Leila Martin for the Vita program. So that's where I get to work with very large groups of people and do all the orgasmic energy fun stuff that I
Love
really
it.
love. And then 101 individually, I do the more deeper trauma healing work with folks so that once they're ready, they can experience the magic of, having full body orgasms and having a very thriving sex life in their own terms. I
Love
think
it.
that's the beauty of healing trauma is that you lead your life in your own terms, whatever that looks like for you. Yeah.
And Amanda, I know my friend Amanda is a good friends of yours too. Were you both teachers
Yeah.
together? Amanda
Yeah.
Testa?
Yeah.
That's so wonderful. And
Yeah.
Layla Martin. And your
She's
last name is
amazing.
spelled Nabao. Is that right?
Yes, Marina Nabao.
Yes. I'll include everything below. Or any final words you want to leave people with? Just anyone who's on a path to motherhood and you'll be
Oh,
delivering here in just a few. Gosh, it feels like in a month.
it's,
Maybe by the time I release this episode, you may have your little one. We'll see.
it's close. I do. I think that love and self-compassion are the superpowers that everyone going through this journey needs to tap into. We all have different beliefs, we all have different ways of navigating the journey, but because there's usually so many obstacles on the way, it's so, so important to hold ourselves, to hold our partners, to hold our experiences with a deep sense of love and self-compassion. That will take us a long way. And if you can bring pleasure to the journey, lucky you.
So beautiful. I love this conversation so much, Marina. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a
Talking to
pleasure.
you. Love you. Bye.
Bye.